Get more done by bundling temptations with tasks you hate. Sounds good to me. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. FocusGroupRadio.com is our website. You can learn about us there, including our Tuesday podcast, TFGM button. If you are listening on audio, you already get that in your stream of choice, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora. And if you're watching on video, we drop this on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube and Facebook Live. And there you have it. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a tongue twister that you opened up there with, I thought. It was pretty good.
Yeah,
you got all that out. That's a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was on the spur. I've learned that you've taught me, not always do I pick up your lessons, but you've taught me that it has to be quick. It has to be, so yeah, there you go.
It could be anything. If you watch the old, Chris Matthews, we took that from Chris Matthews. But if you look at his, it was, it could be anything. He would just say something and, hopefully you stuck around for until it hit.
Well, you were the master of the quick one. Hey, did you notice? And I'm curious to know if you have any thoughts on this, because I was kind of disgusted for a variety of reasons when I saw it come over the news that the Department of Justice is suing Apple. It's an antitrust case claiming their monopoly because of the walled world that the phone, the watch, they all talk together, they work together. I looked at this and I thought to myself, that's precisely why consumers buy this, right? It's easy.
They're suing the company because they've made a good product.
Is that, do you agree with that? Like, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And I thought it was a waste of time. And so Merrick Garland, it was what they got on TV, did a 45-minute press conference about this. To me, it came out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I thought, you're wasting time on this, and yet you've took 2.5, 3 years to try to go after somebody to try to overthrow the government. And I'm worried about Apple having a monopoly in apps. Okay. Our justice system is corrupt. It's corrupt on both ends, if you ask me at this point.
I just don't know what the calculus was. If you're sitting in a conference room and you're like, we want to, like, what's the point they're making? You have a choice as a consumer. You don't need to buy an iPhone. You don't. In fact, when
buy
the
whatever
iPhone
you want.
came out, I was on a BlackBerry. I was on an Android device. I was late to the iPhone. I came like third, fourth phone into the whole thing. And I'll tell you this, the reason I went into it was because the other stuff was so frustrating. And I was like, you know what? Apple just works. And Apple is big on privacy. And the minute you start mucking around with their operating system, they then can't guarantee your privacy. It just didn't make sense to me.
No, we're suing a company for making a good product. So there you go.
Done.
Yeah. No, I thought it was absurd, and I thought it was a colossal waste of time. But whatever.
And I have every reason to believe. Like, I don't know if you have Apple stock in your portfolio, but the minute that thing was announced, it took a massive hit on the market. I don't even know, because the analysts are like, well, now Apple's going to be distracted by a 3-year lawsuit. They're going to drag their heels, and then they can appeal it as well whenever whatever happens. But it's just, I just thought, what a waste of time and money.
Yeah.
I mean, I just couldn't figure out who benefits in the end from this. This the consumer.
The lawyers.
The lawyer.
The lawyers benefit.
You and I learned that, right? Like everybody, the lawyers always win.
Yeah. No, it's somebody had posted. One of our friends had actually posted that and they're a moderate person. It wasn't someone that was some crazy left-wing liberal, but just about how corrupt it appears our justice system is lately. In terms of having Supreme Court justices sitting on cases where their wives maybe
we're sending texts the day of the
yeah. So we'll go on and on and on. But anyway, so that's that. Happy Easter.
Yeah, there you go. Happy Easter. Did you get a lot of chocolate?
You gonna do an Easter egg hunt?
No, we haven't had Easter yet.
No, I said, are you going to do an Easter egg hunt?
No. This is all that Easter stuff. My mom kept that tradition alive. She kept that.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up, because I don't
Okay.
think we've seen the Easter bunny outfit yet that you had to wear. Didn't you have to wear?
Oh, you know what? I do believe that Steve found it. and I'm going to be going to my niece's wedding this weekend. I got to ask
If
him.
you have it, we're going to post it to our Facebook page at Focus Group Radio.
John is
We're
the
gonna
bunny.
Post it.
Yeah.
Your mother insisted you dress as the bunny.
Pull up for Easter Day, and I'm corralled and pulled into the basement, and you're going to be the bunny. And I had to get in this stinky costume that someone else. It was a rental, right? And then you put the paper mache head over. Within seconds, I'm sweating gumballs because the thing is hot. The kids are loving it. The Easter Bunny's here. Everybody had to sit on my lap. By the time I go downstairs and get out of this thing, I was like soaked through. And my mom's like, "Oh, you did a great job." On to the next
She rented
thing.
a water barrier or something, like one of those
Yes.
rent costumes. I find that fascinating that she was that excited about Easter, but you didn't dress up for Santa Claus, or you weren't.
No,
but
something
it was
about
Easter Bunny.
And she would have the weather was good, she would have put, there was always an egg hunt. Some of the plastic eggs had quarters in them. Some had
Yeah.
candy. There were prizes and stuff. And
Well, your nieces probably loved it.
oh, they adored it. And all us adults knew that we were, like in a sort of a play. I guess that's the way you would put it, right? We were in a play, so we did it. But it was fun.
Yeah.
But when I would drag Bob with me, and Bob's like, this is my least favorite holiday. I don't even think it's a holiday. It's like a religious thing. And in fact, in the Catholic faith, this eclipses Christmas by leaps, and this is the most important day of the year because this is when he is. And then when we were
risen.
younger, we would call friends of ours house, and they would ask, "He is risen, hallelujah." Can I talk to Penny? He is risen, hallelujah.
He is risen. It's Sunday.
It's Sunday. He's risen, hallelujah.
Yeah, he's risen. By the way, I saw somewhere that the Mormonism is on the rise, John. Most denominations are seeing a decrease in membership, but I was reading in the New York Times that Mormonism's on the rise, so you might want to consider it.
I just have trouble with something that that came out of like plates that were found in upstate New York. I mean, it's just.
It's a little like Scientology, right? Maybe, I don't know. I don't mean to be insulting.
That was a science fiction author who created Scientology, right?
But the more I read about it, the more I think that it could be plausible. And you being a science fiction aficionado, I think you would understand
Are you talking Mormonism
it
or Scientology?
too. Scientology, because
As
what they
plausible.
believe. Yeah, because they believe that something came here and
Benu or Venu or like some bad guy.
Well,
like,
something came, a meteorite or something flew here, some piece of rock, whatever, a micronism, something grew into people. and so we're from another world. Like we were, little amoebas from another planet that got here by some meteorite. And then over the years we developed and then we grew into this species that we are. Right? Isn't that Scientology in a nutshell?
in a nutshell, and then you
People
forgot the
came
tin
from another
can-
planet
and you forgot the tin cans, the wire, and the black box that measures
for
your
auditing. Yeah, you got to audit. And then there's plates in upstate New York that the Mormons found buried, and they moved them to Utah or something. Yeah. So it's all pretty.
I still
plausible,
think
I
you and I have a successful career ahead of us as being the heads of the Church of the Focus Group.
Church of the Focus Group, we just need to do compliance. That's the difficult thing. You have to find somebody to handle the compliance, right?
Yeah, whenever we've talked about, like, Tim and I have a whole thought process about Church of the Focus Group. I would love to see it come true someday, because then as a religion, we could, live sort of a tax-free life, right?
Right. Go around, give speeches, have big,
Collect put the donation plate around, put it in our
right.
pocket.
You
It's a
do
religion.
the 3 day. What do they call those when they get together? Not a hoedown. What the heck do they call
Oh,
those things?
I know what you're talking about.
Gatherings. We should know. We're not very religious, I guess, John.
I mean, it's the equivalent of a barn raising in a different way, right? Like,
Yeah, it's like
Go
a
raise a
jamboree,
barn
the
for
Cub
a
Scout jamboree, Focus Group jamboree.
I think it's time to move forward with Caught Our Eye. So on that note, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So I saw this came through CNN. He died He died in January, but they just announced it last week. So the headline is: the inventor of the first karaoke machine, Shigechi Negishi, died at 100. And he was an entrepreneur. He invented the first karaoke machine in Japan, and it was 1967, and he called it the Sparko box. And he said that device created and ushered in the Japanese karaoke craze, which anyone who knows much about Japanese culture, karaoke is a big part of it. I know when I worked at Subaru, everybody had karaoke. We all had to participate. I hated it at first, and then I actually kind of enjoyed it and the campy aspect of it. John will tell you we were working for a cannabis company, and they were all in on karaoke. John, you did not sing. I sang for most of the night.
I got out of it, and I learned that they were so into karaoke that the machine they
Crazy.
were using in that barn was like the third one. They had broken the other two somehow.
Right.
Well, when we saw the antics, we could see how they broke it. But yeah, this is a cool one.
So he worked for he worked for a manufacturing company that assembled car stereos in northern Tokyo. And while he was working and he would assemble these car stereos or whatever, he would sing, and all the workers made fun of him. So he thought it'd be kind of fun if he developed this machine where he could sing along in the car, or sing along at work, or something to that effect. So he talked to one of the engineers and said, if I had taken some of these car stereo components and attached a microphone and speakers, could I create a singing machine or something? And the engineer said, sure, it's easy. So they attached a phone to an input terminal in the car stereo, and they created this prototype of what they initially thought was somewhat of a jukebox. And so then they said you could sing along. He said the very first time they were able to get it to work, they knew they were onto something fun and something that would also change the way people entertain themselves, and discovered something new, as he put in quotes. So they marketed the device as a Sparko box, along with sets of cards and lyrics that they produced. And they installed about 8,000 machines around Japan, and then mainly in bars and restaurants. And they stopped selling the product in 1970 because he never got a patent for it, and he never protected it. So other companies came in and ripped it off. And it was also, there was another guy named, I'll say it wrong, Daisuke Inoue. And he also was initially, they thought, credited with inventing the karaoke machine, but he did his in 71. The Sparko machine was 67, but he was able to commercialize it and commercialize karaoke a little better. So, so in fact, and I should be able to say this name better, having to be able to at least say Japanese, Negishi, Negishi, is actually credited with the craze. There's also a group called the All Japan Karaoke Industrialist Association, and they keep track of these machines around the world. And there's 131,500 bars currently equipped with karaoke machines. There's a market value of $2.6 billion, and there's 8,000 dedicated karaoke box venues in Japan alone. So he had passed
They're the
away,
king
and they
then?
honored him.
From a country point of view, like their
Country
per
point of view,
capita,
Japan. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The per capita karaoke. Tim, with Japanese, do you generally say it like you see it?
Yes, it's very, people would kill me for saying this. It's very Spanish in that way. In other words, there's no other way to say the sound. So
Then the way the
if you look
letters
at this, if you look at SHI, that's always she. So eyes are like E's. So that would be, I would say it's Sigechi.
So it's a hard G. I'm sorry for our listeners because I'm fascinated by this, but Sigechi.
The E's are a
Negishi.
long A, right? The I's are a long E. The E's are a long A. So that'd be Negishi. So Shiguchi Negishi. It's
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I've never seen that first name before, but no, I can read Japanese as it's written with the Latin, letters. I can't read the characters.
Oh,
but I can read it. I don't necessarily understand a lot
So
of it.
so did he ever profit from the invention in the long run? Did he ever, or others just
No, only
duplicated,
from the ones he sold from like 67 to the mid 70s. He would sell these the Sparko box, as he called it. And then as electronics, of course, technology got better and better. That's when this Inoue guy came in the 70s and was able to perfect the machine and perfect the idea. But neither of them ever protected. They never patented the machine. They never perfected, or they never protected the idea. So both of them, even though they invented the product, quote unquote.
Karaoke.
They invented it. They never were able to capitalize on it because all these other large corporations came in and just mass produced them. And karaoke in Japanese means empty orchestra.
Seriously?
So that's where that's the loose translation. So that's what caught my eye this week.
I think it's a great one. Mine could not be further from karaoke. And it's a story I've actually seen a couple times that I've been fascinated by. And there's a wreck off the coast of Colombia. Cartagena is this city. It's a port city in the Caribbean. The ship is called the San Jose. It was sunk in 1708 by a British warship. It was discovered quite a while ago, and its value, the contents of the cargo hold, as estimated by divers who have visited it, is $17 billion.
Wow.
And that is made up of silver, emeralds, 11 million gold coins, they think, based on the way they used to transport them, an intact Chinese dinner service and porcelain pottery. And this is all like this inventory they did was done in about June 2022. So the Colombian government has now been given full authority, and they always asserted that they had full authority to raise this ship and to raise the treasure. But it took a while to get there because apparently an American company, a U.S. salvage company called Sea Search Armada, claimed they discovered the location of this wreck in 1981, and they've been attempting legally to secure their right to bring up the treasure. But a U.S. court declared the galleon was the property of the Colombian state in 2011. But see how long this takes? So finally, the Colombian government said, okay, we're going to coordinate this. The Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Arts and Knowledge, the National Navy's General Maritime Directorate, and the Colombian Institute of Anthropology all got together and decided how we're going to raise this and what parts are going to go to museums and what can we sell. So they think it's going to take about a year, and they've put over $1 million or $1.1 million against the whole thing. But they even had to go out of their way to like talk to UNESCO. Is it a cultural heritage? I mean, it's a shipwreck, right?
Right.
I mean, if you knew that there was $17 billion in coins and pottery and silver sitting off the coast and you could get it, right?
Well, it's whether you and I talked about this before with a couple of others, is who claims it, right? So if you get it, can you get so if you spent $100 million to create, whatever the craft is and the people to recover this stuff, will you be able to keep it, or do you get the prize, quote unquote? Because a lot of times you don't, right? It becomes that's property of Spain, or it's property of a country off the coast, or whatever. That's where, to me, I always have the big question mark. Although I think if you're an explorer or an adventurer, you would love to go down there and treasure hunt.
Finding a shipwreck like this with all this intact cargo is like a dream come true. The U.S. company that originally claimed to have located this cited international maritime law as one of the reasons why they were going to court about it, because there's this whole thing about if a wreck is so far off the coast, it's considered international waters, which means you could put a stake in it and say that's yours. But over time, Colombia successfully argued that no, this is a cultural heritage. It's a national treasure. It belongs to us. And we will be the people who profit from its discovery and raising it up. So this came across late last week, and I was like, wow, I remember seeing a documentary about the company who found this a couple years ago. So it's been going on for a while. But there you go.
It's like that treasure of Oak Island that was on I think it was Discovery,
Tim,
or one of those channels.
They're still running that darn thing.
Oh my God,
right?
I laughed. My father, who's convinced there was treasure there, he and Brian Roman watch it every week. I'm like, Dad, they found a couple
holes.
Bottle caps. They found a pop top, a few bottle caps, a horseshoe. Nothing in there. Billy the Kid, no, it's treasure. There's treasure in there.
Wasn't there, Tim, when we were on our road trip, we went to Merrimack Caverns.
Yeah.
It's who hid out in the cavern. There was supposedly a treasure they took with it, or if they were bank robbers or something.
I think it might have been Billy the Kid.
Billy the
Billy
Kid.
the Kid was in there, laying there with his gold bullion.
They actually had 2 walls of a cabin set up inside this cavern, and there was a mannequin dressed up as Billy the Kid. You and I could barely contain ourselves on that entire tour. That was just too,
I'm glad we stopped.
Oh, If we had not stopped, we would have been the saddest. We had that was one of the highlights of the trip, and that happened, I think, on day 3 or I think it might have been day 3, because
There was someone on social media recently that was traveling Route 66, and I thought, oh, so I type in, and I didn't know them all that well, but I said, don't pass by Merrimack Caverns. Be sure to stop there. Now, they probably wouldn't get the same humor you and I did out of it, but all they typed back was, we saw the signs. Remember all the signs?
Yeah.
It was like that Aunt Martha's old from Lucille Ball, 2 miles to Merrimack Caverns. You just passed Merrimack Caverns.
You and I wanted to do a book of all the signs that we saw.
Right, but but they didn't stop. But then I wonder, they probably might not get the same humor that we did, and we might not find it as funny either. Who knows? We might not find it
a second time around. I don't know. All the staff had uniforms that vaguely looked like the National Park Service, but they're not the National Park. I mean, it's that kind of thing, right? Like, and then that little thing in God Bless America. Did they change that at the end?
Yeah, there's a new thing at the end now. Somebody made mention of even campier though. I think it's a video. There's a wall. There's a screen with a video that comes down, and there's something else. But it's still as quiet, and you can still hear people talking in the background and laughing,
and the lights being clicked with.
And everybody had touched all the stalactites or the stalagmites, where they're all broken because people had touched them over the years. It takes billions of dollars or billions of years for these things to do, hundreds of millions of years to create one. People knock them over like icicles.
When we were on the
they had to
tour,
put a plexiglass so you didn't touch them.
Tim looked at one of them and he goes, "Is that what they're supposed to look like?" I'm like, no, it's cracked off,
busted,
like a tooth.
Broken.
And then at the very end, when we were watching the God Bless America, with that famous song, that woman that sings that, and they started with the light switches, and I was distracted by the guide doing the switches. That's when you turned and stopped looking at me, because then you began
started
to sweat
sweating
because we didn't want to. You wanted to howl with laughter. We both did. And if Tim looked at me and I but it broke the covers. So there you
fuse box.
Click, 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 click. All right. Without further ado, it's time for our business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
From one engineering feat to another, we've got for the business birthday today, March 27th. He died at 70 at April 22nd, 1933. Sir Frederick Henry Royce. Went by Henry Royce. If he was in the U.S., we'd probably call him Hank Royce. And he was also a baronet.
Wait, a baronet?
There's a baronet, OBE.
Baronet. Okay.
Right. So I had to look all this up. So anyway, he's the co-founder of Rolls Royce, but the full name is Sir Frederick Henry Royce, first baronet, OBE. So I thought, well, what the heck is this? So OBE is an officer of the most excellent order of the British Empire.
Ah.
And a baronet is actually was created by King James in 1611. And it's not part of the peerage, nor is it an order of the knighthood. A baronet ranks below barons, but above all knights.
Okay.
Maybe a baronet. So anyway, he also had, if you're watching our video, he was very much in, of course, Rolls Royce is the epitome of perfection and class and engineering and craftsmanship and all that sort of thing. And so that was one of his famous quotes there, which was, strive in perfection in everything you do. Take the best that exists and make it better. When it does not exist, design it. So he had worked with two gentlemen, Charles Rolls and Claude Johnson, and developed the Rolls Royce company. And they started out just making engines. He was born in Peterborough, England, near Peterborough, England. His father, he was one of 5 kids. Father worked in a flour mill. The business failed, so the father picked the family up and moved them closer to London. And he began selling newspapers and delivering telegrams. He had only 1 year of formal schooling, but he loved to tinker and loved to experiment and engineer things. And so in 1878, he started working for the Great Northern Railway. And when the money ran out and he had to move again, he picked up and went to Leeds and worked for a tool-making company and did a lot of work with electric lights and power. And also moved to Liverpool and worked on getting street lights and theater lighting done for in the late 1800s.
So
And
that we could assume that electricity was just coming in as being
Yep.
okay.
yeah, so he decided he teamed up with this other guy named Eris Claremont, and they decided to start a business making domestic electrical fittings as electricity, as you noted, was coming on. And they developed some electric products, electric cranes, as well as some of the other electric devices they would use for lifting. They called them dynamos. And he was introduced to another guy that had interest in engines. And at that time, engines were only about 2 horsepower, 6 horsepower, 8 horsepower, very small. But he decided he bought some engines that were on the market and tried to make them better. So he thought some of the products were inferior. So he tried to make them better. And that's when he was introduced to Charles Rolls, who had a car showroom in London. And he was selling imported cars, and they came up with the idea, let's make our own cars. So in 1904, they started making vehicles, and the cars initially were 2, 3, 4, and 6 cylinders, if you can imagine. So they were tiny, they were carriages,
Small
essentially.
engine, yeah.
Right. And that's how the Rolls Royce company started. From there, they also started working on aircraft engines. And during the First World War, the Rolls Royce Eagle engine, they were only one of 2 engines that were used for aircraft that were reliable and didn't fail. So it was Rolls Royce.
So they were providing engines for like prop planes
For the British
like
military. Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, for the British military. So then he ended up as cars and then as their company grew, he realized that the cars that were on the road were not very comfortable. They were very stiff, and they just didn't adjust properly in the terms of suspension. So they said the night before he died, he sat up in bed and he drew the sketch on the back of an envelope, and he gave it to his nurse/housekeeper and said, please take this to the boys in the factory. And he died the next day. And lo and behold, 3 years later, they came out with what was known as the adjustable shock absorber, based upon this drawing he did the night before he died.
That drawing he did on his deathbed.
On his deathbed
Wow.
the night before,
Okay.
and they put it into another product that after he died, they teamed up with W.O. Bentley, so Bentley cars. So that the first shock absorber, whatever, was put on a Bentley made by Rolls Royce. And that's where the shock absorber and kind of the smooth ride came from, by these adjustable shock absorbers that they came up with. So they were famous for that. And so he married a woman. I thought this was a fun name. He married Minnie Punt, was her name.
That's an interesting name, right?
Well, I read this and I thought maybe it's just my sick mind. So he marries Minnie Punt, and they lived in Carlton cum Hardy, C-U-M.
Okay. Oh,
And
okay.
After they left Cum Hardy, they moved to Knutsford. And I thought, did somebody make this up? They went from Cum Hardy to Knutsford, Minnie Punt. Anyway, so he lived by the motto, whatever is rightly done, however humble is noble. And so that's it. Happy birthday to Henry Royce.
For some reason, I think I have this stuck in my head that the most popular aircraft engine was a Stirling engine, or I'm probably wrong about that. Anyway, well known for the aircraft stuff. They're still in existence, right? Who owns Rolls
Still in
now?
existence. Yeah, I thought they were part of General Electric with the Rolls Royce aircraft engines. I could be wrong.
Yeah, because GE does they do aircraft engines as well.
But Bentley was bought by Volkswagen, and I believe Rolls Royce was bought by BMW. I could be wrong, but they split. The two companies split. One was bought by Volkswagen. One was bought by BMW. But no, they're both companies still in existence, and both are still known. Of course, Bentley and Rolls Royce known for their craftsmanship and their quality of product, I suppose, for lack of a better word. You ever ride in a Rolls Royce?
Never. No, have you?
I don't think I have. I had friends who had one. Our friends.
I've
I had friends
never
that had
been in
them, but
a
we never rode them.
Bentley, never been in a Rolls, never been in a Maybach. I don't know
No.
anybody who's been in a Maybach. That's like that handmade. They make like 5 a year or something great.
Oprah Winfrey bought one for Stevie Wonder.
She bought him a Maybach?
Yeah. So you have the same reaction as so she was being interviewed. I think it was by Bill Maher or somebody, and he was asking him all these crazy questions, and he said, "I want to see whether these things are true or not." Oh, it was Jimmy Kimmel. That's who it was. So he goes through all the list of things, and he said, "And you bought Stevie Wonder a Maybach?" She goes, "Yeah." He said, "Why?" Well, she said it was he sang at her 50th birthday party, and he didn't want to get paid, but he said, "You can get me a Maybach," which is like $230,000. So
Do you think he was
question?
joking?
Well, no, but right. So the question everybody says is, well, why? He can't drive, right? It was like Ray Charles when he did the Renault commercial, and they had him out in the desert driving it around. So she said, in fact, he did drive it. They had him somewhere in some big open field or open road or whatever, and Stevie Wonder was driving the Maybach around. She said she sent her a video of it.
I'm glad you answered like why it was that. Like that he actually said, well, I enjoyed performing at your party, but get me a Maybach. I mean, it's just...
I hate to be mean, but right, if you're blind, put him in a Hyundai. You don't know. I mean, how would you know you're in a Maybach?
The feel of the car, the Corinthian leather. I mean, I don't know. That's
I mean, if I blindfolded you, right? If you were blindfolded and put in a car, I wonder if you could tell. If you were blindfolded and you went into 4 or 5 different cars, if you could tell what you were in. That's a good
for sure. If you're an auto designer and you've been in the industry for several years, you could probably guess pretty close what brand or make you're in. Cabin noise has a big thing about that. So the Maybach must be super quiet inside the cabin, right?
Yeah. It's a huge. It's an uber luxury car. It's an incredible car. But yeah, I just wondered. I don't know.
There you go. It's a good business birthday. The Rolls Royce. All right, I teased this at the beginning of the broadcast or the podcast today, and Tim admired that I was able to get through it without. It was like she sells seashells by the seashore kind of thing, right? And the article that we're referencing today is this. It's from the HuffPost, and the headline reads, "Keep putting off important tasks. Try temptation bundling to get them done." In a nutshell, research has looked at this, and it's backed this productivity hack, I suppose you want to call it. And it's simple. If there's something you don't like to do, you marry it with something you do like to do. So the example I'll give you is if you have a true crime podcast you love, but you really hate cleaning or raking or whatever it may be, maybe you set up you set up a system where when you do your laundry or you clean, whatever that task may be, you listen to the true crime podcast. So you're getting a reward and you're also doing what you hate, and it's very mundane. And there's a quote in here. It says, "Temptation bundling can make mundane activities more enjoyable." Now, I agree with this. I read this article, and I totally agree with where they're going. And in fact, they covered a few things that I was going to say, well, wait a minute. What happens if you don't do this or you don't do that? The only thing I have a problem with, and I'll toss it over to you, Tim, is not every task that I find mundane can be bundled with a temptation, because sometimes you actually have to sit and think and just do it. But maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're right. And that's why I was trying to think of my own examples of things where I procrastinate on. And is there something I could reward myself with if I did this temptation bundle? What would it be, or how would I do it? And I'm not sure I came up with an answer. And it was funny because I was going to ask you the same thing. If you had to do, you do the accounting for the company, right? And so if you had to go through and do the accounting, would you say, okay, I'm going to put on my favorite album, or I'm going to put on music or a podcast? But you would do that anyway.
No,
so,
your example is actually hilarious, because I do have a temptation bundle that does revolve around the accounting and the bookkeeping. I found on YouTube about a year ago, I didn't know they did this, but they like a stream, like one of these music streams for ADHD. So people who need to focus for school
really? I got to
or
look
studying.
that up. ADHD.
Yeah. And
music
it's just,
stream.
And it's not there's no lyrics. It's not recognizable hooks. You don't get caught, but it's something that plays, and there's a ton of them, Tim. There's some that go for 10 hours, some that are live streaming. So when I do that, I turn that on, and that actually that does this weird thing of allowing me to just kind of focus on, the numbers and QuickBooks and, pulling in the transactions from the credit card and reconciling that. But I can't do that same thing if I'm writing. Like if you and I are putting a presentation together, a pitch deck for a client.
Right.
Do you listen to music actually? I should ask you that.
I don't.
So when you,
I
okay.
don't. I usually keep it quiet. I might have the news on in the background, but I don't have. I always thought I'd have music going or something to that effect, or I'll go to the romance of going to the coffee shop and typing out the. It doesn't happen. I type out any deck at a coffee shop. So no, I usually just sit quietly, mostly early morning or later at night, and I'll do the work. But somebody many years ago told us, and I think you're going to know where I'm going, that the dread is worse than the deed, right? One of our listeners told us that.
Yeah.
And there are a number of things where that still comes into play with me. I'll procrastinate on something and I'll do it, and I'll be like, you know what? That took me an hour and 10 minutes. I bitched about doing it for a week, and it really was just an hour and 10 minutes. I could have had it done and been moved on. And but I've always procrastinated. I've never been able to fix it. I procrastinated in college. I procrastinated in high school. In terms of getting things written and done, I got them done on time, but I would usually wait till the last minute before I put pen to paper or keystroke to, paper or whatever. I think you waited too. Did you ever get anything done early?
No, I always got my work done on time, and I didn't feel like I was being rushed. But what I've
But
discovered,
not early. You wouldn't be 2 weeks early. If you had a paper in college that needed to be done,
nope,
end of the
no
semester,
way.
you probably
You and I knew people who were done early.
I hated them.
They had their little note cards. They were off to the library. I take solace in a couple of research articles I've read about the way creativity functions. And you and I are not exactly in this kind of cut and dried world of putting a sales chart together for how well did this deodorant sell when we changed the price by a nickel. I mean, that you and I could probably do that with our eyes closed. The difficult part is when we're trying to put to words a concept for an entire marketing or advertising campaign, and we want brevity, we want simplicity, we want the idea to sell itself, we want the client to basically say, I see exactly where you're going. That is really hard. And so when you think you're procrastinating, you're actually, in my opinion, from the way I work, I'm running through like, how do I want to say it? And sometimes it feels like, and a friend of mine said, sometimes just getting the first 10 words of a project onto a piece of paper are the hardest part of the entire project. And if you have people say that to you in the creative space like we're in, you know we're not the only ones doing this. If someone says that's the hardest part is starting, right?
No, I remember all the creatives at the different agencies would always just go outside and wander, go walk. If they were in a city.
Like me riding my bike. Yeah.
Right. They would wander and walk and think, and maybe something would trigger an idea that they saw, or they'd view something and thought, oh, hey, that's a good concept. Maybe there's something there. And there's something to be said for that. This one, though, with the tasks one, I think it's a good idea. I think there's the reward of if I do this, I could do this. Or if I get all this work done by noon, I can then go out and meet a friend for lunch. For me,
There's
that would
a good
be
bundle.
more.
I like that one. Yeah.
Or if you said, if I get all this work done by noon, I'm going to be able to take a long bike ride this afternoon and then not worry
Which
about
is
it.
an incentive I could do. Instead of an hour and a half, maybe I'll go for a 3-hour ride or something. Yeah.
So it's more of an adjacent bundle than it is a, at the same time, because some of these I actually did like where they made mention, I think she made mention of being on a treadmill and getting exercise done or being on Stairmaster or something, but also then listening to a lecture she needed to listen to or listening to something that she enjoyed. So getting exercise in plus listening to your podcast or doing that. So
now the one that I laughed at, because you and I don't do this, but getting a pedicure and going over sales reports. So
I can't imagine sitting there and reading.
Looking at spreadsheets.
Right. Your feet are getting tickled. You mentioned YouTube. I came across. I should post it to our website just because I was fascinated by it. I always love language. So there's a YouTube channel that is two actors, and it's what English sounds like to foreigners. And it's not English, but it sounds like English. So when you listen to it, there's two people sitting at a table having a conversation, and it's English, but it's not, and it's hilarious. You'll have to. They're sitting there having dinner and having a full conversation, and it's definitely English sounding words, but they're not. And I remember, I think I've said this before I used to say how English people would make fun of how Asians people would speak, and they would, ings and whatever. And I would ask the Japanese, how did they make fun of English speakers? How did they think English sounded? And they said it was a lot of ink, ing, ink, ing. And I thought about it, and then I was like, yes. It's, if you start listening to English and hear that ing, ing.
So you're saying that when the two actors do this, they're probably very consonant. They call that the sibilant S, I think you're talking about. Consonant, vowel, like it's the sound of it, not the actual words.
Right. It's all, they're not words, but it's English. And I can't describe it, but I was fascinated by it because I was like, yes, it sounds just like English, but I don't understand it. But it sounds like English. So there's a sh, the ing, and you might hear nose, and you'd hear something that okay, but yeah, I'll post it to
post that. You got to send it and post it. All right. So that was the bundling article. Bundle a mundane task with something that gives you pleasure. Do it repeatedly, and you'll have this kind of nice thing going. But it doesn't work with everything, but it works with a lot of things.
Yeah, that was a good article. Hey, we hope everyone has a great week ahead of them. If you celebrate Easter, have a happy Easter. I hope the Easter Bunny's good to you. Remember, don't text and drive, arrive alive, and we'll see you next time here on the Focus Group. Take care.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.